Mount Sinai has been in the news for certain events concerning the breaking of a tablet of stone. Nonetheless, there are 7 more shocking facts about Mount Sinai you may not know about. Let us go through them, starting from what you are most familiar with. God gave the 10 commandments at Mount Sinai. If you want a place that God actually visited, it is the Mount Sinai. The Bible says in the book of Exodus chapter 24, verse number 10, that, "And the Lord said unto Moses, Come up to me into the mount and be there, and I will give thee tables of stone and a law and a commandment, which I have written, that thou mayest teach them." The 10 commandments were etched from the stones of the Mount Sinai. The mountain is so significant that its stones were deemed worthy of carrying the law of God. Today, the law is etched in our hearts according to Hebrews chapter 10, verse number 16. It says, "This is the covenant that I will make with them after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my laws into their hearts, and in their minds will I write them." Now, the law of God is written in our hearts, but in those days, it was actually etched from the stones of the Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai was also called Mount Horeb. According to the Bible, the Israelites made a calf in Horeb. Now, the mountain below which they made the calf was called Sinai. Therefore, if it was the same mountain called Horeb, then certainly it was the Mount Sinai which was called Horeb. Certain books of the Bible use Horeb, others use Sinai. Psalm 106 verse 19, "They made a calf in Horeb and worshipped the molded image." If you are a Bible student, you will realize that it is when Moses came from Mount Sinai that he saw the people with the molded image that they were worshipping, and he broke the tablets into many pieces. Now this tells you that the same mountain that Moses descended from is the same mountain that below it the Israelites actually made the calf to worship, or the molded image. And so that Mount Horeb is the same as the Mount Sinai. And like I said earlier, different versions of the Bible or different books of the Bible use them interchangeably. Some use Horeb and some use Sinai, but it is the same mountain. Mount Sinai is the same mountain that Moses saw the burning bush. Before Moses got to the task of leading Israel, he encountered the burning bush. This bush was on the Mount Sinai. This is where God spoke to him through the burning bush. Clearly remember that he took off his sandals because he was on holy ground. Exodus chapter 3 verse number 1 to 2 says, "Now Moses kept the flock of Jethro his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he had led the flock to the back of the desert and came to the mountain of God, even to Horeb. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush, and he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed." Elijah the prophet visited Mount Sinai, and God spoke to him there. When Jezebel the queen sought the life of Elijah, he fled to Mount Horeb, which is the same as Mount Sinai. In 1 Kings chapter 19 verse 8, the Bible says, "And he arose and did eat and drink, and went in the strength of that meat 40 days and 40 nights unto Horeb, the mount of God." At Mount Sinai, Elijah fortified himself with food and drink, and he was able to stay for 40 days and 40 nights in the mount of God without eating any other thing. So that is how significant Mount Sinai was in the life of Elijah. The next thing is that the rocks on Mount Sinai have thorns etched on them. And this is a very serious thing. Listen to the explanation very well. The rocks at Mount Sinai have the image of the thorn bush on them. One rabbi split the rock there into two and found a thorn bush etched on either side. He broke it again and found a thorn bush on either side again. It means that the rocks on the Mount Sinai itself, within them, they have etched on them the thorn bush, the image of the thorn bush. It's a shocking fact about Mount Sinai. Again, touching the Mount Sinai in those days meant death. The mountain was so sacred that touching it meant death to the culprit. The Bible says this in Exodus chapter 19 verse 11 and 12. It says, "And be ready against the 3rd day, for the 3rd day the Lord will come down in the sight of all the people upon Mount Sinai. And thou shalt set bounds unto the people round about, saying, Take heed to yourself that ye go not up into the mount, or touch the border of it. Whosoever toucheth the mount shall surely be put to death." This meant that if you ever touched the Mount Sinai at that time, you were surely going to put to death. You were going to face the death penalty. These are shocking facts about the Mount Sinai. A lot of work goes into these videos. Please do well to like and subscribe. It costs nothing. Shalom. Peace be unto you.